On everybody, I'm back with another video. This video is going to be looking at Manchester City versus PSG in the second leg semi-final of the Champions League and taking a look at how Pep Guardiola's Manchester City got into the finals after this game. Be sure to check out the description below. In the description is a link to my book and a link to Keyframe, which is this software and how I made this video. So be sure to check those two things out. But let's get right into it. With PSG in possession as our first phase we're looking at, they built out of the back with their two center backs in the half spaces, split by Keylor Navas. Then they went with a double pivot of Paredes and Herrera. And from here, their fullbacks created the width, and a lot of the fluidity happened with Verratti, Di Maria, and Neymar between the lines, with then Icardi, the highest player, further up the field. So moving into the Manchester City half now, we have the build-up, still the width being created by the fullbacks, the center backs remaining relatively narrow just off our screen here, and the fullbacks creating width, which is then secured by the double pivot, and the double pivot had the versatility to move into the half spaces and had either player be able to move in more advanced areas, but primarily maintaining control in transitions and to avoid being overextended. Now Manchester City went with a 4-4-2, but as we see here, they had a few tendencies that stretched their shape a little bit, and one of which was the orientation of the wide players. So here we have Zinchenko confronting the ball of the fullback, and then we have Phil Foden marking an advanced run by Di Maria, who is occupying a higher space between the lines. And so our midfield then becomes staggered because of it, because of the tracking of the run. So with these two players having the fluidity to track players and press and change their roles for a short time, the Manchester City team remains in control in their defensive phase. We then see players like Neymar drifting into the wide areas, and then Verratti and Icardi occupying the central areas, stretching the back line, with Di Maria also being able to enter the space between the lines and then exit through a vertical run. So now in the second half, we see now with the compactness level of Manchester City in their defensive phase, it became harder and harder for Neymar to get on the ball between the lines. So oftentimes he would move out of the space between the lines and move into a wider position to then find space and to try and create isolation against one of the Manchester City defenders. And all this being supported by the double pivot, which gave the fluidity of the front players to go further forward. Now Manchester City, we see out of possession of the ball, we see clearly their 4-4-2, primarily emphasizing their compactness around the double pivot and having man orientation through the highest players while maintaining spatial control between the lines in advanced areas. So now, one of the keys on how Manchester City controlled the space between the lines was the staggering of their midfielders. So if we have our back four here and Kyle Walker just off our screen, we can then look at the staggering. Phil Foden comes deeper, Gundogan a little higher, Fernandinho deeper, and Mahrez higher. So we then have players playing on two different horizontal lines, Fernandinho and Phil Foden sharing a horizontal line, with Gundogan and Mahrez sharing a horizontal line as well. So what this does is it gives them more access over a larger amount of space, thus giving them more spatial control in the midfield third and in the more dangerous space. So as we see, the players can go horizontally, and for the space they can't create access to, they have the cover of the advanced players' cover shadows, and it lines up very well against PSG's occupation of this area. And then the two forwards gives them better control over the double pivots while being able to press the two central defenders. The space is then conceded in the wide areas, but through the fullbacks they have to come from a deeper area, and with Phil Foden, the wide player, playing a little bit deeper near Fernandinho, he then has his sight on both the wide player and the ball. So now Manchester City in possession, and they did a few things that were very interesting in possession of the ball, slight tweaks in how they use the wide area. So many times their fullbacks in the first third were in the wide area, with Ruben Diaz and John Stones occupying the half space along Ederson. So Zinchenko and Walker creating the width in the field, stretching the PSG press, and emphasizing the space that the Manchester City midfielders had between the lines. So from here, we have our Manchester City double pivot, which gave them passing options between each of the players in the PSG front three, and with Bernardo Silva typically playing through the center. He also had Kevin De Bruyne and Gundogan playing through the half space, with Mahrez and Phil Foden going both more narrow through the half space. So by overloading the half space, they were able to overextend PSG and find the pockets between the lines. One of the keys to overloading the half space is having the player at the base and having a player pinning, while then creating players free into the half space via Fernandinho and then Kevin De Bruyne in the higher area. So now we can take a good look at it and how they overload the half space. So Kyle Walker, John Stones, supported by Ruben Diaz, and now Zinchenko creating width as well. So if we connect the structure, we can picture the back four all here, and we can look at Fernandinho and Kevin De Bruyne in the half space, with Mahrez just making our screen at the top here, pinning the back four. So we have a player pinning, we create depth to stretch the PSG team vertically. As we can see, they don't have much compactness here entering the midfield third. So this is good for teams trying to play out from the back and find the free man. But we have our player Kevin De Bruyne and Fernandinho both playing the half space, overloading this area while overstretching the PSG play. So this gives them a stronger circulation structure and more space to play through dangerous areas. And Phil Foden would do the same with Ruben Diaz on this side. Phil Foden pinning, with always the ability to come back between the lines, and Ruben Diaz creating depth with Gundogan also as a double pivot, looking to come in to the half space when the situation elicits that. So now looking at the play just before the goal, we can see the Manchester structure really clearly, the fullbacks creating width and even going higher up the field. So we highlight the defenders and the goalkeeper here. So the width being created by Zinchenko and Walker, while Mahrez and Foden, Zinchenko and Walker, and Mahrez stays wide here as well. But now we have Phil Foden coming narrow and joining the midfield players, drawing the attention of the PSG defenders. So with three players in advanced areas occupying the defensive line, we have players from PSG looking to jump, as we see here, which then breaks their line of offsides, which is being held at halfway point because of the halfway offsides rule. So this allows Zinchenko to get in behind while still maintaining his onside positioning. So between the double pivot occupying a midfielder jump, this leaves three advanced midfielders, or two advanced midfielders and Phil Foden acting as the 9 to pin the back four, take their attention, and create all this space in behind for Manchester City. And that's how they scored their first goal and solidified their place in the finals. So thanks so much, guys, for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.